The psychology of people who remember everything. You are driving home from work when a song comes on the radio, one you haven't heard in 15 years. Within 3 seconds, you're back in your childhood bedroom. You can see the exact pattern of light filtering through the blinds. You remember what you were wearing, that oversized gray sweatshirt with the coffee stain on the left sleeve. You remember the argument your parents had that morning about something trivial, grocery bags left in the car. You remember the weight of loneliness pressing against your chest, the specific quality of silence in that room. And then you remember what came after, the shame of crying, the resolution to be better, to need less, to take up less space. The song ends, you're back in traffic. 3 minutes have passed, but you have lived an entire afternoon from 2000. Have you ever noticed that some people do and just remember, they re-experience? That for some of us, memory isn't a photograph we glance at, but a room we're forced to walk back into, complete with temperature, texture, and the exact emotional frequency of that moment. Let me tell you something that might explain why you're still here, still reading. If you have this kind of memory, the kind that doesn't let anything go, that holds on to conversations from 6 years ago and the micro expressions on people's faces when they said they were fine but weren't, there is a reason, and it's not what you think. This isn't about intelligence. It's not about having a good memory. It's about survival. Psychologists call this highly superior autobiographical memory, or hyperthymesia. It's when your brain doesn't just store experiences, it catalogs them with forensic precision, complete with emotional metadata. You remember not just what happened, but how the air felt, what was said 3 sentences before the important thing, the exact shade of someone's disappointment. But here's what the textbooks miss. This doesn't develop randomly. Research from the journal Neuropsychology shows that people with highly detailed autobiographical memory often have enlarged brain structures in areas related to emotional processing and threat detection, the amygdala, and parts of the prefrontal cortex. In other words, your brain grew this way for a reason. It learned that forgetting was dangerous, that missing a detail could cost you safety, love, or survival. Think about this. When you grow up in an environment where emotions are unpredictable, where a parent's mood can shift like weather, where love feels conditional, where your needs are met only when you perform correctly, your brain makes a decision. It decides that survival depends on pattern recognition, on reading the room, on remembering every variable so you can predict what comes next. The child who remembers everything is the child who learned that forgetting meant getting hurt. Maybe your mother said she wasn't angry, but you remembered her tone from last Tuesday when she used that exact inflection before exploding. Maybe your father promised something and forgot, and you learned that keeping track was your job, not his. Maybe you were blamed for things you didn't do, and the only defense you had was your memory, your ability to say, "No, that's not what happened, I remember." So you became a historian of your own life, an archivist of every interaction, and your brain, in its beautiful, desperate attempt to keep you safe, made remembering automatic. John Bowlby's attachment theory helps us understand this. Children with inconsistent caregiving develop what's called hypervigilant attachment. They're constantly scanning for threats, constantly monitoring emotional temperature, and memory is the database that makes hypervigilance possible. You can't predict danger if you don't remember the last 50 times something went wrong. Here's the heartbreaking part. This adaptation worked. It kept you alive. It helped you navigate chaos. It made you indispensable, the one who remembers birthdays, who knows everyone's stories, who can recall exactly what someone said 6 months ago when they need to be held accountable or comforted. But what saved you then is exhausting you now. Let's talk about what it is actually like to live inside a mind that won't let go. You're in a conversation with someone you love, and they're telling you about their day. You are present, you are listening, but part of your brain is cross-referencing this story with 15 other stories they've told. You notice the small inconsistency, the detail that doesn't match, and you have to decide. Do you say something? Do you stay quiet and let it go? But you can't let it go because your brain has already filed it away under things that don't add up. And now it's a data point in a pattern you didn't ask to see. You might find yourself correcting people not to be pedantic, but because the truth matters so intensely to you, because you were gaslit so many times that accuracy became sacred. You might replay conversations for hours, sometimes days, analyzing every word, every pause, every shift in energy, not because you're overthinking well. Yes, you are, but because your brain is trying to answer a question it learned to ask very young. Am I safe? Did I do something wrong? What did that mean? You might remember every time someone hurt you with photographic clarity, but struggle to recall moments of joy with the same precision. Research in the Journal of Experimental Psychology shows that emotional arousal enhances memory. Consolidation, traumatic or threatening memories are encoded more deeply than neutral or positive ones. Your brain prioritized survival over happiness. It remembered threats because threats mattered more than comfort. You might feel like you're living in multiple timelines simultaneously. The past isn't past, it's present, accessible, alive. Someone mentions a name and you're pulled through a wormhole into 2012. A smell, a phrase, a certain quality of light, and you're suddenly somewhere else, feeling something you thought you'd processed years ago. And here's the thing nobody tells you. This makes rest nearly impossible because rest requires letting go. It requires trusting that you don't need to monitor everything, remember everything, stay alert to everything, but your nervous system never learned that lesson. It learned the opposite. Forgetting is dangerous, relaxing is dangerous, not paying attention is dangerous. So you carry it all, every conversation, every slide, every moment. Someone was unkind or kind or confusing. You carry the weight of total recall, and it's heavy in a way people who forget easily will never understand. There's a specific kind of loneliness that comes with remembering everything, and it lives in the gap between your experience and everyone else's. You remember the exact date you met someone, the shirt they were wearing, what they ordered, the joke you made that landed wrong. They remember that you met. Maybe you remember their story about their childhood, the one they told you drunk at AM 3 years ago. They don't remember telling you. When you reference it now, they look at you confused, maybe even suspicious. How do you remember that? And you can't explain, because if you say that, you sound intense. You sound like you're not letting things go. You sound like you're holding on to things that should be released, but you're not holding on. Your brain is. The quietest truth about having this kind of memory is that it makes you a historian everyone needs but nobody wants to be. You are the one people come to when they need to remember something important. What was said in that meeting? Who was at that party? When did this thing happen? You're the external hard drive for everyone's fragmented recollections. But when it comes to your own memories, your own pain, your own version of events, suddenly your memory is too good. Suddenly you're dwelling. Suddenly you should move on. A study in social cognitive and affective neuroscience found that people with superior memory often report feeling misunderstood in relationships. Their partners experience them as bringing up the past when they are actually just referencing their continuous present. Because when you remember everything, the past and present exist on the same timeline. Last year's argument isn't in the past, it's in the file cabinet labeled unresolved, right next to this morning's tension. This creates a painful dynamic. You become the keeper of collective memory, but your own memories are too much. Your grief lasts too long. Your hurt is too detailed. Your ability to recall harm even when you have forgiven it is viewed as evidence that you haven't really forgiven it. And yet you can't turn it off. You can't forget on command. You can't selectively delete the files your mind has archived. So you learn to perform forgetting. You learn to say, I don't remember when you absolutely do. You learn to pretend the past is hazier than it is, just so people feel comfortable around you. You learn to make your memory smaller so others can feel bigger. Here's where it gets interesting and maybe more painful. The same memory that isolates you also makes you extraordinary at holding space for others. Because you remember everything about people, their fears, their dreams, the small details they mentioned once and forgot they said, you make others feel profoundly seen. You're the friend who remembers they don't like cilantro, who knows their mother's name and their dog's birthday, who can say, didn't you mention wanting to try that? About something they mentioned months ago. This is your superpower. Your capacity to witness. But Carl Jung once said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. This speaks to something essential about your experience. You are transformed by every encounter because you retain every encounter. You're marked by everyone you meet, shaped by every conversation, changed by every interaction in ways that people who forget easily never are. You don't just meet people, you carry them with you. This is beautiful. It's also exhausting, because while everyone else gets to move through life dropping memories like breadcrumbs, you're collecting them all, storing them, organizing them, living with them. There is research by cognitive neuroscientist Elizabeth Phelps showing that memory and emotion are neurologically intertwined. They use overlapping brain circuits. This means your superior memory isn't just factual, it's deeply emotional. You don't just remember what happened. You remember how it felt, and that feeling doesn't fade the way it does for others. It stays vivid, alive, immediate. So when someone says, why can't you let that go? They don't understand. It's not that you won't let it go. It's that your brain hasn't filed it as past. It's still in the active folder, still emotionally present, still textured with the same feeling it had when it was happening. This is the paradox. Your memory makes you an incredible friend, partner, witness. But it also means you carry everyone else's story alongside your own, and the weight of all those stories, including the ones you wish you could forget, becomes almost unbearable. Let me tell you what most people miss about having this kind of memory. It's not just about remembering, it's about being unable to construct a narrative that protects you. People who forget easily get to rewrite their histories. They get to smooth over the rough edges, to remember their parents as mostly good, to recall their ex as kind of toxic without the full weight of every kind thing and every cruel thing existing simultaneously in their mind. You don't get that mercy. You remember your mother's tenderness and her rage with equal clarity. You remember the person who hurt you also held you through panic attacks. You remember the friend who betrayed you also celebrated your wins. You can't simplify, you can't flatten anyone into a villain or a hero because you have too much data. This might be why you struggle with black and white thinking, or why you are accused of it when you are actually seeing in a color spectrum so complex others can't perceive it. You hold contradictions because your memory forces you to. You contain multitudes of evidence about everyone, including yourself, and this inability to forget the nuance makes it almost impossible to protect yourself through distortion. You can't gaslight yourself into believing something was better or worse than it was. You were there, you remember, you have the receipts archived in your mind, whether you want them or not. Jung wrote extensively about the shadow, the parts of ourselves and others we want to deny or forget. He believed that wholeness requires integrating the shadow, acknowledging it, bringing it into consciousness. For you, integration isn't a choice. Your memory doesn't allow you to suppress the shadow. You see it, all the light and dark in everyone, including yourself. This makes you painfully honest. It also makes you exhausted, because living with that much truth, that much complexity, that much unfiltered reality is a weight most people never carry. There's a reason we forget. Forgetting is protective. It's adaptive. It allows us to move forward unburdened, to start fresh, to believe in redemption without being haunted by every past version of someone. But you don't have that option. You have accuracy instead of peace. You have clarity instead of distance. You have truth instead of the gentle distortion most people use to survive their own histories. So how do you heal when you can't forget? Let me be clear. I'm not going to give you steps. I'm not going to tell you to journal or meditate or practice gratitude, though those things might help. What I want to offer you is something different, a reframe, a way of understanding your memory not as a curse you need to fix, but as an adaptation you can honor while building new relationships with. First, witness this. Your memory developed to keep you safe. It worked. You survived because of it. This isn't pathology, it's proof of your brain's incredible capacity to adapt. Second, understand that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means changing your relationship to what you remember. A memory loses its emotional charge not by being erased, but by being integrated, by being held without judgment, acknowledged without shame, witnessed without the need to fix or change it. There is work by trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk showing that traumatic memories feel different than regular memories because they are stored without temporal context. They feel like they are happening now. Part of healing is helping your brain refile these memories, adding timestamps, creating distance, saying, "This happened then, I'm here now, I'm safe now." You might need to practice temporal grounding. When a memory floods you, you might name aloud, "I am remembering 2015. It is now 2026. I am in my living room. I'm safe. That was then. This is now." You might need to find people who can hold your memory with you, therapists, friends, partners who don't ask you to forget but can help you carry what you remember. You might need to give yourself permission to set boundaries around your memory, to say, "I remember, but I choose not to discuss this anymore," because remembering doesn't obligate you to constantly revisit. You can acknowledge what's in the archive without reopening every file. And here's something crucial. You might need to grieve. Grieve the childhood you didn't have where forgetting was safe. Grieve the lightness others carry that you don't get to experience. Grieve the exhaustion of being your own witness when you needed someone else to remember for you. Your memory made you vigilant when you needed protection. Now you get to decide what you're protecting yourself from, not by forgetting you can't, but by choosing what you give your attention to. What you allow to define you, what you let occupy your present. You're not broken because you remember everything. You're carrying evidence of everything you've survived, and maybe it's time to let some of those files rest. Not deleted, just archived, acknowledged but not active, honored but not controlling. There's a scene we started with you, in the car, pulled backward by a song. You saw your childhood bedroom. You felt that old loneliness. You remembered everything. But here's what I want you to know. You're not that child anymore. You're the adult who survived them. And your memory, the thing that feels like a burden, is also your greatest evidence of resilience. You remember every hard thing, which means you survived every hard thing. You carry every wound, which means you're still here despite them. You can't forget, which means you've earned the right to decide what you do with all that remembering. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." For you, becoming doesn't require forgetting, it requires integration, taking all those memories, the beautiful and terrible, the kind and cruel, the simple and complex, and saying, yes, this happened, all of it, and I'm still here, and I'm still becoming. You never got to be the child who forgot their pain by morning, but you get to be the adult who remembers their strength. And maybe that memory, that evidence of everything you've endured and overcome is exactly what you need to finally, fully become whole. You're not haunted by your past, you're witnessed by it, and maybe for the first time, you can witness yourself with the same compassion you've always given everyone else. You remember everything, and somehow, despite everything, you're still here. That's not a curse, that's proof you were always strong enough to carry it.